Welcome to this week's podcast of Kicking It with Kidneys with your host, Cindy Barclay. Hey, Cindy, take it away.
Welcome back to Kicking It with Kidneys, a forum to discuss important topics for suppressed voices within communities of color. An ongoing debate exists between health advocates as to whether or not salt is a major cause in undermining the health of people of color. Under normal circumstances, our bodies have sodium regulatory systems that balance our sodium intake through what is ingested via sodium loss that occurs in our urine, sweat, and our stool. An excess of sodium in food is common to most populations worldwide. So, our salt intake is in part discretionary, or what we choose to add to our food, and non-discretionary due to current food processing standards. However, African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans are particularly at risk for having negative health outcomes because of excessive dietary salt. Research has documented minorities, specifically African Americans, are the victims of habitual high salt intake, leading to increased rates of cardiovascular disease. This means heart attacks, heart failure, atrial fibrillation, peripheral vascular disease, and chronic kidney disease. Today, we will look at the history of this debate and offer alternatives to viewers who are interested in preparing a healthy diet and the satisfaction of a delicious meal. Our KIWK team is back with us. We have 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐿, Maria Jimenez, and Rita Williams. So BJ, what is the word on the street?
Well, the word on the street really hit home for me this week because I do struggle with hypertension, and the topic of salt sensitivity is probably something I really need to be aware of. After I listened to the comments, it became a personal call of action for me. So let's listen.
The two most prominent dietary risks for death and disability in the world are not eating enough fruit and eating too much salt. Too little fruit kills nearly 5 million people every year. Too much salt kills 4 million.
Added salt is a huge problem because it raises our blood pressure. It puts increased risk and stress on our heart. And it also damages our blood vessels through stretching them to, high pressure levels. So salt is something that we have got to do a better job eliminating in our diet.
Hypertension, salt sensitivity is the largest chronic disease on the planet. More people are affected by it compared to all other diseases combined. So
hypertension is more prevalent in the African American community. For one thing, there is the issue of genetics. African American are more prone to retain salt and so are very sensitive to salt. And also, African Americans have a lot of salt in their diet. And so it's easier for them to have issues with high blood pressure as a result of that.
We were always grown up on eating junk. Friends, family, anything. Nobody really taught us how to eat healthy.
If you think soul food came from a tradition of eating hog mugs and piles of fried chicken, then you better think again. Because for thousands of years, traditional West African cuisine was predominantly vegetarian.
A second, more horrific example is people on dialysis. About 1/3 of all Americans on dialysis are Black Americans, but we only have 12-13% of Americans are Black. You can imagine that. Even young people, especially, stuck on dialysis machines, is very horrific to note.
95% of the salt you consume in a day comes cooked into the foods you eat. So it should get more attention. But, for whatever reason, it doesn't. But I think awareness is a case of understanding it and talking about it and realizing there's something you can do about it. It is not inevitable having a heart attack.
Now, in certain diseases, such as congestive heart failure, liver cirrhosis, and chronic kidney disease, the processes that regulate sodium balance is disturbed. This disturbance leads to a tendency to retain salt in water. Salt must be significantly restricted. Otherwise, there will be swelling in the body. A lot of people call it edema. Well, doctors refer to it as edema. And most common folks say, I'm swelling up everywhere, usually in your hands, your legs, and your face. Sometimes it's in the abdominal cavity, which is called ascites. And worst of all, this is a life-threatening water buildup in your lungs that's called pulmonary edema. Our guest today, Uletta Carter, is a real dietitian and is an expert in the subject matter. Uletta is a proud graduate of Prairie View University, one of our HBCUs, where she obtained her bachelor's degree in science in diabetics. Her scope of services range from educating adolescent obesity to medical nutrition management of patients diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. She is passionate about chipping away at the dietary pestilence of excessive salt in communities of color. Welcome, Uletta.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with y'all today.
All right, so let's get started. BJ, what say you?
Okay, again, it's great to have you with us. My question is, what is the prevailing viewpoint in the field of nutrition and dietetics on the effects of salt for patients who have hypertension and chronic kidney disease?
Well, the viewpoint currently today is that we consume more than twice the daily recommended allowance of sodium in our diets. The average person will consume approximately 4,000 to 6,000 milligrams of sodium a day. The recommended is 2,300.
Wow.
And yes, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's like you basically are eating almost 3 days in one day. One day. I know some people are visual. I'm a visual person, and you tell me 2,300 grams of sodium. I'm like, okay, what does that look like? Right? That's 1 tablespoon. If you go get your average table salt, it's 1 tablespoon. That's your daily allowance of sodium.
Oh my gosh.
I know people, I see them in the, restaurants putting more than a tablespoon of salt on their food. So thank you for putting that in a
form that we can understand.
Okay. So that's just talking about what Ms. Maria was saying, added salt. But we got food processing. Okay. Basically, most all the foods, even though sometimes you can think you're eating fresh, let's say we get frozen shrimp, from Sam's or something like that, but they actually still soak the shrimp in a sodium tripolyphosphate bath. Okay.
Wow.
So that's still sodium being soaked into the seafood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Are they doing that to preserve it, Uletta?
Yeah, it's to give it a more puffier appearance, firm appearance, because seafood can get, if it's sitting there, it's going to get, the firmness is going to go away. So they actually bathe seafood in these baths for moisture and for firmness. So we're getting sodium, no matter however we put it, it's going to be there. And then we're adding sodium, as Ms. Maria said, table salt. We add sodium when we cook. So one meal is going to get you to like over that 2,300 recommendation daily allowance.
So why is there such a problem with African Americans? We got, we're number one in renal failure. We got hypertension. Okay, I think the Hispanics, I think your people are, Rita, Latinos are.
We're right behind y'all or trying to beat y'all.
Well, no, I think y'all beat us in the diabetes,
We are in the diabetes, but we love our salt as well. Salt and lemon, oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, well, that's one good thing you got going for you with the lemon, because in order to re-educate and train ourselves
on that lemon,
we need to start using juices, juices to season our food. So that's one good thing the Hispanics do. They do use a lot of lime and they use a lot of lemon. But once again, they still add the sodium there. So.
And you let it do a lot of times when people are looking at those juices, there's sodium in that. I was surprised to find out that certain juices, energy drinks, things like that will have sodium in it.
Okay, yeah, you're true about that also. But what you're going to have to do is just go buy you some lemon and limes freshly yourself. You got to cut them, squeeze that little juice into them to make a marinade. And it's basically, you can kind of infuse seasonings. I know we kind of get ahead of ourselves, but you can infuse seasonings. You can chop some bell peppers, some onions, do that fresh lemon juice, let it sit in the refrigerator for, like, if you do it that morning, then you can marinate your meat. You can actually add it into your broths. So when you cook, you can add it into whatever, like if you're making a casserole, if you're making something that requires you to add liquid, then that's your pot liquor, if you want to call it. That's what we call it in Louisiana, for as taking something that we cook something in or made something in, and we add pot liquor to it to enhance the flavor.
What is pot liquor? You said pot liquor. What is that? You said you're from Louisiana. What is pot liquor?
Pot liquor, okay, say for instance, holidays is coming up. The way I was taught, the way you make cornbread dressing, you're going to boil your liver, you're going to boil your gizzards, you're going to boil that chicken breast. Okay, so you got all that flavor of meat in the water, right? That's your pot liquor. And you're going to use that pretty much for all preparations of all of the rest of the items that you're going to have for Thanksgiving or Christmas. You don't throw your pot liquor away ever.
Well, that pot liquor sounds delicious either way, but no salt, right? Just fresh ingredients put in there.
Just freshing.
But I do have a question for you, Yoletta. So what numbers should people be monitoring if they're trying to maintain a healthy salt intake? For example, what should be the daily amount and what should we be looking for on food labels?
Okay, your daily recommended is 2,300. For dialysis patient, we need to curtail that down to 2,000. You should be looking at the food label. You should be looking for what's considered low sodium, anything less than 140 milligram per serving of that particular item. So you got to pay attention to the serving size, how many servings is in that container. Because like say, for instance, use the whole container of whatever you're trying to prepare. Then if it's 3 servings, you got to multiply 3 times that 140 to see basically how much you're having in that one particular item. Or you can look at it like this. If it's less than 20%, then that's considered as low sodium because you're looking at a 2,000 recommended daily allowance. So 20% of that is 200. So once again, we're still on the lower mid 150s, 140s for a low sodium diet.
But Yoletta, we don't cook no more, Yoletta. Okay, especially African Americans and everybody, but primarily it's quick, it's easy. I see young kids, parents with the young kids, McDonald's and all these other places. We don't cook anymore. I mean, so we're getting, and then when they get like French fries, they're adding extra salt on the French fries. I mean,
or the young professionals that work from morning till dawn, we use Maria, you don't work that hard. You don't work that hard. DoorDash and Favor, all of them on our to-go. So what would be your recommendations for people that do not cook or prefer to eat out as far as managing a restricted diet?
Okay. For as people who are eating out, so what are you going to look for is what type of restaurants are you going to? You want to try to pick the restaurants that are actually going to prepare fresh meals, pretty much, not any kind of preservatives. So when you're ordering, you want to basically stick with your fresh grilled products. You want to do grilled chicken, fish. And then if you can ask if the food could be prepared without salt added, then you can make that request. For the vegetables, you probably want to stay away from any kind of fried vegetable. You want to get the fresh green beans, fresh carrots, mashed potatoes. If they can prepare without, because I'm pretty sure that they don't have low sodium butter. I'm pretty sure the butter probably has sodium in it.
I saw something with the butter. Is it called Simply? They said, okay, Yoletta, let me ask you something. What's the difference between the real butter? I see something sometimes that says real butter. I know butter has salt in it too. But when it says real butter, what is the difference between real butter and margarine, I think?
Pretty much the butter is probably overall better for you because it's less processed. It's pretty much churned, but you can actually get low sodium butter. It's there. I buy low sodium butter because I know how to add so much.
You let it back to those fries. I can ask for those fries without salt?
Yes, most people do that.
I'm just asking.
But wait a minute. When you pick up those fries, Rita, they don't give you salt they give you the fries and you ask for the salt. Okay,
but they put a lot of salt. Sometimes too much at that. I think you said McDonald's. I'm not sure.
I thought that they just put the fries in the little thing and
no, I've seen them just ask for it.
No,
you can ask for it, but they may tell you gotta wait.
Yeah, you're gonna have to wait for fresh fries. Most people use it as a trick to get hot fries. They be saying because McDonald's will buy. I mean, you're the customer. You got to pay for what you want. You can say I want no salt fries. They can say okay, we need to step aside. It's gonna take a couple of minutes. They're not gonna dump your fries in the general population where they dump the other fries because it's salt based in there all day. I worked at Wendy's going through high school. So the salt, when they salt the fries, that salt is still standing in the tray. They dump it in. So what they do, if they fry your fries, when they pull it out of the basket, they take some tongs and get it. Because if they put it in that population where it normally goes, it's going to it's defeat the purpose. It has sodium, salt in the serving area there. So you can ask me those.
I didn't know that they did it. I thought they just put them in the grease and then took them out. I didn't know that they actually.
No, they got. You never saw them when they. And then
she don't go to McDonald's.
Oh, okay. Well,
whatever.
Yolanda.
I didn't work at fast food very long, but I did work fries because that's the easiest, easiest to do.
Okay.
Well, Yolanda, can you give us some shopping or food preparation tips that have been helpful to your patients?
Okay, for as shopping, we already talked about what we need to look on the food labels. For as trying to food preparation, we need to stick with our spices. We need to stick with the juices. What will complement pork? Basically, apple or applesauce. Have you ever went to a restaurant and they kind of gave you an apple dessert to complement your pork? So you can actually take some applesauce, get fresh pork if you have to get pork, but that's already a salted meat. And if you can base it with the applesauce and then do some herbs, pretty much you could do saffron. What is that? I think it's turmeric. But only a little, because some of these spices are so powerful that you only need a little. With cooking with spices, you're talking about a lot of money that's going to have to be invested. So if you're going to go with these spices, it's best to, get little containers and put them in and for the pantry, but you want to freeze the rest because they can go bad on you really fast. And some of them, little jar of spices, cost you about $10. And so you don't want to waste that money because you only need a little when you're cooking. And if Ms. Barkley said, we don't cook a lot, so you need to freeze that. But
I think we need to start doing that. In the United States of America, we've gotten away from cooking, and we're having, and basically it's resulted in an unhealthy nation. But primarily people of color. So I think what we're trying to get, and you mentioned pork. Is pork good for people to eat? I mean, I'm not trying to get nobody to come on and get mad at me. And I know people are trying to sell their products and stuff, but we're talking about health here. Okay. So
yeah, we're talking about health, but have you ever seen that commercial called the white meat? You could buy good kinds of pork. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but you buy the more leaner cuts.
Well, we're dealing with a population that's already, the income is limited. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's going to cost more, but I'm glad that you gave that recommendation. But what are some alternatives to pork?
Poultry. Pretty much if you're talking about for as an income impact entree. So you'd have to probably stick with poultry, some fish, but not the good fish, because the good fish is going to cost you a little bit more money, like the salmon and the trout. Pretty much, they're kind of limited pretty much to chicken. Beef is there.
But like you're talking about the seasoning and stuff, and we had something else on another show. Remember how they told us if we use that seasoning, even not the best quality meat can be very tasty and healthy for us if we use some of those seasonings you're talking about, the lemon juice and fresh basil and all that kind of stuff. We can, perk it up. We got to do what we got to do with what we have.
Yeah. What about the seasonings like Mrs. Dash and
Paul Perdue? Those are fine and those are good. Mrs. Dash offers a variety of blends. But once again, you have to order these online because they're only in the grocery store. They have very limited choices, or you actually can make your seasoned blend. They have different kinds of blend that you can mix together to achieve flavors that you're trying to get. I have an actual blending chart where it shows you how to blend different seasonings for barbecue, for fish. But it's different seasonings that you can put together to make your own Mrs. Dash, if Mrs. Dash is too expensive. But then once again, these spices can be expensive if you buy them individually. So Mrs. Dash might be a more economical way to purchase that.
Okay.
True. Well, I have another question for you, Yolanda. This is this information is real good. So some people supplement their food supply through assistance from like food banks. How can they eat healthy if they don't have the opportunity to make their own selections?
Food banks cannot choose what they receive. The donations are given from the community. So, but they do have fresh fruits and vegetables available at the food bank. Because I actually had a dialysis patient came in with a cooler because he went and got him a watermelon. I didn't even know they give watermelons out at the food bank.
Yeah, they do. It's in season, whatever's in season.
Yes. So they actually do provide families with fresh fruits and vegetables, but unfortunately, it depends on the amount what they have, but you can't really like pick and choose. They just make you a box and we have to deal with it. But as much as possible, you want to prepare the fresh fruits and vegetables the best as you can to eliminate the parts that you can't. Now, if you get canned goods,
that's what I was going to ask.
That are not labeled low sodium, then when you're opening, let's say a can of corn, you want to put it in a strainer. You want to rinse the sodium off of it. You don't want to cook it in the same medium that it comes in.
Sounds good. You know, holiday season is coming up. 𝐸𝐸letta, and you from Louisiana, right?
Yes.
You know, y'all know how to season up everything down there. Shy. Did you say shy? How do they say shy?
I don't say that. Shy. It's shy.
Okay.
Well, I'm from Baton Rouge, and we don't say shy. We're not. I'm not from that little going. It's for the West. We're in the middle, so we kind of don't have an identity in my perspective.
Okay, so you chose to go French on me, but that's okay. That's all right. Okay. Oui. Okay. All right.
And I know it's hard especially with the patients that you deal with in the holiday season. So what do you tell patients and just people in the world about, being mindful about their diet in the holiday? And, it's very social. And, that Big Mama's best cornbread and collard greens. That's right. And stuff. So what's your recommendation during this season?
And all this other stuff. And like BJ, that little insert that BJ had, word on the street, African Americans, we were trained to eat like this. Minorities trained to eat like this. We came from basically a vegetarian plant-based diet, but we've developed these habits and we seem to be exceeding other races as far as, having medical issues. What are your recommendations for the holidays? I mean, I'm going to have me some cornbread. I'm going to have me some greens.
Greens with ham hocks.
No, wait a minute. Now, I didn't tell you about no ham hocks.
You're supposed to do the turkey.
I'm going to do the turkey with mine.
I heard last time that's what y'all said.
Okay. That's like I was explaining, it's like a triple, because, you're cooking it twice. And as Ms. Barkley said, we have come accustomed to, we want the food to taste good. We want it to taste, I think it's just a habit. When you cook something, you got to put seasoning in it. You got to put the seasoning off. So basically, when you're cooking the meats that go into the cornbread dressing, you're going to add seasons. Then when you make the cornbread, you're going to add some seasons. Then when you remold it together, you have a tendency to add more seasonings. So basically, when I was telling you about the pot liquor, you're just going to have to keep you some extra pot liquor, infused pot liquor, what I'm saying, like cut up with the bell peppers, the onions, also with these different kinds of the cumin and the turmeric and possibly some sage.
Are you talking about turmeric or
turmeric? I'm sorry, turmeric. And possibly some sage and cumin. Cumin is an underrated spice to take place of the sodium. But when you're seasoning, especially if you don't have time to cut up with the garlic or the onions, but you got to make sure you read the word powders. You don't want no garlic salt, no onion salt. You want powders. Yes. Okay. Or if you could just get the minced garlic, that's even better. But once again, it's kind of costly.
Or just buy a clove of garlic and chop it up.
Yes. But once again, like during the whole holiday meal preparation, you do want to take the broth that you have set aside, and you want to add those other fresh seasonings to it to take the place of adding all that salt and sodium. And then, of course, you're going to use your Mrs. Dash if you have that, to add more flavor to it different from the cut up vegetables.
You work with a lot of dialysis patients, right?
Yes.
I guess my question is, have you seen, I think, part of the problem that has occurred with the hypertension and the diabetes, a lot of it has to do with diet, right? So have you seen any changes in the before and after? I mean, any regrets, like if I had eaten better, things would be better. Do you see a lot of that? Or do you constantly have the same problems with getting patients to be compliant with their dietary regimen?
I had a couple in-center patients, because, you see them on a regular basis when you're talking to them, actually admit, once again, younger patients, like with the episode when it was coming up, they was talking about younger people being on dialysis with high blood pressure. It was actually some of the younger people saying, I could have ate better. I could have did better. Or I could have did without the with adding extra salt because they're in a situation under 30, sitting on a dialysis machine. And while they're sitting there, blood pressure is like skyrocketing. Because I'm actually talking to them because I'm seeing the blood pressure in red. And just, hey, what did you do? But make a lifestyle change and then they go back to the old habits. Yeah. It's kind of like...
So you don't see a lot of compliance, even though they're on these machines, even though they have kidney failure and a lot of these other issues. I kind of mentioned pulmonary edema where that fluid goes to your lungs and you can't breathe. So in spite of all of that, you're saying that the temptation to still practice those old habits are still there?
Yes, and it depends on their circumstances. Like we were talking about, there might be an economical factor that plays into that. If they can't do any better, you on my end, I try to teach better. If they ask me a question, I'm like, oh, Violetta, this is all I have. This is all I can do. Hey, I would give you some seasonings. I mean, I used to do that. I would give people seasonings, especially when I see the blood pressure going, in the red. Okay.
So you're saying that what you've seen is a lot of non-compliances because of finances. That's what you're saying? They can't afford it?
For the younger generation, yes, because they don't cook, they eat out. It's a circumstantial environment.
And like Maria that's said, a choice too.
Yeah, it's a choice. Yeah, it is a choice. But we have seen with our guests last week, we did see 2 of them have to lose the weight, and they lost it, and they've kept it off. And one got a transplant, and one is waiting. So we do have successes. I think sometimes it's hard to see a person, and I know Yoletta, and she educates them and they keep coming back, well, Yoletta, this happened and this happened. But it is personal choice and you have to choose to be healthy. It is hard. I mean,
it is hard. And
it's a struggle, daily struggle.
It's a cost to eat healthy. It costs more money to eat healthy. Like we was talking about fish. To get a better fish, you got to spend more money to get the better fish. To get the better white pork, what I was speaking of earlier, it's going to cost a little bit. So yes, I know it's a social economic factor that plays into that, but we try to have to help these people as much as we can, try to educate, try to offer alternates. Like I said, a lot of people haven't experimented with buying the lemon, cutting it up. You actually can use the zest peel, clean it off really well. If you scrape off some of the hull.
So is that going to decrease your taste for salt by doing a lemon?
Basically, it'll give it a different flavor. And if your palate gets used to that, once you get away from sodium for a minute and you try to go back to salt, like me and Miss BJ was talking, when you do baby steps and step down from like whole milk to 2% to 1%, and let's say you're in an environment where you don't have the choice and they only have whole, when you drink that, you kind of have to take a step back, like, okay, well, this kind of feels thick to me because you've gotten accustomed to drinking a thinner type milk. My mother basically had some breathing issues, COPD. She occasionally takes prednisone. Well, prednisone, they say you have to monitor your sodium intake. So I kind of watch out what she eats and educate her on some things that she may not pay attention to food labels. She was drinking VHs. I'm like, Mom, you realize that was high in sodium. But anyway, she was off sodium for a long time. And let's say she goes out to eat. It scares her because something that she ate before, it seems like it's a lot of sodium. And if you get away from it for a while and you actually eat something we eat every day that doesn't taste like a high sodium, she'll push it back. I'm like, okay, well, that tastes like got too much salt in it. I eat it, I don't see any difference. So when you remove it from a while and then you get used to something else, then it comes accustomed.
Yeah. So it's a gradual change requiring. It's a gradual change to make that change completely. I would think so because I told you I like the lemon and salt, but I bet you if I just do the juice of the lemon, I won't like it so much. But if I try it more often, I bet you it is good.
You can experiment with vinegars. They got all kinds of vinegar, apple cider.
And that's not expensive.
Was about balsamic vinegars. You got different wines you can cook with. Cook with. So you can have different kind of flavors infused for marinating. You can just let your meat sit in the refrigerator and marinate to get the ultimate taste of just removing the taste of sodium. I think sodium is just something we just like the tart, flavory burst, but we need to try other alternates for that.
It's addicting, like sugar.
It is addicting.
It's addicting.
Yeah. DJ, you had a question?
Yeah. What about 2 things? one, what about portion control? Because we talk about, the finances. And I think in America, we just eat big. You guys in Texas, so you eat bigger. But the thing is, portion control, when we look at other cultures and we look at the type of dishes that they serve, meat is a very small part of it. They increase more vegetables and you have a little bit of meat. So if you're doing a portion control, I don't need a huge, big piece of salmon. If I just mixed my vegetables and had smaller portions of salmon, I could afford the more expensive meats if I don't eat so much.
Yes, that's true. Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
And then the second thing is, we did talk a little bit about the difference between salt and regular salt, and then
you got the Himalayan pink salt. Okay, you got Himalayan pink salt, and then you got the sea salt, and then you got the regular table salt. The regular table salt, 1 teaspoon of regular table salt is 2,300 milligrams of sodium. You got your pink salt. Your pink salt is going to be approximately maybe 300 milligrams less than the table salt. And then you got your sea salt, which is, the Himalayan salt is, table salt is 2,300 teaspoon. The Himalayan is 2,040 milligrams teaspoon. And the sea salt is 2,000 teaspoon. Okay, so most people think salt is a non-processed food or non-processed seasoning, I should say. Salt is a processed item. Mm-hmm. And like I was telling Miss BJ, they actually have a salt mine here in Katy. I should go through backwards to go to Prairie View, and it's a salt. I can't think of the name of it. But what happens is the salt, they mine the salt, and when they get the salt out, they heat it to very extreme temperatures. It's like, for refinement. And once they refine it, they add potassium, they add some sodium, and they add the iodine because, to prevent goiters. So they add the iodine. But not only do they add those items, they also add dextrose and sodium bicarbonate and sodium silicone aluminate to make it easy to pour out easy. Okay, so that's what that added. It's a processed item, but when you get the Himalayan pink salt, it's no process into it because they naturally let it air dry out.
So that's the better salt of the three.
Sea salt.
Well, the sea salt is a better choice. It's 2,000 for the teaspoon.
How much does that cost? Is that I don't know. Is it more expensive than regular table salt?
The pink salt, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And like Ms. BJ was saying, it gives it. Depends on what you're cooking, but it can give it it's like a garnishment. It makes it look prettier. It's pink.
Don't use as much.
But choices. You pick and choose. I mean, if I'm going to buy the pink salt, and it's your personal choice. If, like BJ said about buying just a smaller portion of salmon, it's, what are you going to sacrifice for your health?
In a family, if they buy the expensive salt, that will be an automatic. Don't be using that salt.
That's right.
They'll tell you, don't use that pink salt.
Right. But the sea salt, it's actually, the way they clean it is evaporated in under the sun. It contains 5% potassium and calcium, magnesium, and it's readily usable all the minerals are readily usable by the body versus the sodium bicarb and the sodium silicone aluminate. That kind of additives are not readily used by the body.
Girl, I hear you talking, but most people don't even know what aluminum whatever that is.
It's pretty much
what that is.
It's additives that we really don't need. And going back, let's take CKD out of the picture. Okay, now when you go to the store, let's say we don't have CKD in the picture.
Chronic kidney disease. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Because now they do have a Morton salt, it's light salt. If you do not have kidney failure, that is an alternative. It is 50% less sodium, but they replace the sodium with potassium. Like I said, as long as you don't have renal failure, that is an alternate choice. 50% less. Okay, so you're getting half.
So you're saying we need to read. We have got to read. We've got to be more educated, and we've got to read. And that's the problem, in that a lot of minorities, especially when it comes to food, we just go into these generational curses. Big Mama did it, everybody else. And like I said,
it's hard to break those.
It's hard to break those. But we got to do it if we want to live.
Yeah.
We want to live.
And we got to stay away from the processed foods. Because once again, that's what the sodium is. The sodium is added as a preservative. Okay, we just got to get away from it. Eat stuff fresh. Once again, it's a choice. Like Ms. Marie said, it may be a little bit more expensive, but it's a choice. A choice to have a longer, healthier life, or eat what's there and have a not so healthy life.
So you can choose to get on with living, or choose to get on with dying. Okay. Yeah. So BJ, let's get some final thoughts from you about our show and participants for the show.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much. I've learned a lot. And if there's anyone in our audience who needs to watch their salt intake, and based on this show, that's pretty much everybody, we could all do better. I learned something myself, is to not think about what you can't do. So don't look at salt like something you're having to give up. Look at it more as an opportunity to learn about new flavors, new seasoning. There's just an old saying that variety is the spice of life. So not salt, variety. And as always, again, we want to thank our audience for listening. Please, 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 this is a vital show. There's a lot of information that Yoletta has shared with us. And as Cindy says, we need to read. Well, if you don't read, listen.
Yeah.
Tune in, tell your friends. If you can't remember this, write it down. Tell your friends to listen to Kickin' It with Kidneys and learn. Live and learn.
Rita, final thoughts.
My final thought is the foods that you eat can be either the safest, most powerful form of a medicine, or the slowest form of a poison. So put the salt shakers down, folks.
I like that. Maria?
Well, Yoletta, thank you again for all of your knowledge that you're sharing with the community. We really, really appreciate that. And it hits home because I am a salt lover. I love salt. But I'm taking heed of what you presented today. And it's all about your will and wanting to live. So if you want to live.
Wait a minute. You African American and you're a dialysis person. Did you say you love salt?
Well, they said nurses are the worst patients. So.
Well, I guess
we're human, Cindy.
Oh, okay.
We're going to do better.
Oh, you're going to do better. So you're going to work. Okay, you're going to do better.
Do better.
All right. Okay, Yoletta, give us some final thoughts.
Final thoughts is flavor for life. As Ms. BJ say, use alternate sources to flavor your life other than sodium.
Okay, and live.
Live, yes.
And live. Okay, well, we thank you guys for joining us today. And Yoletta, especially you, thank you so much. We really appreciated that.
Well, thank you for having me on.
All right. And we want you guys to join us next week on another episode of Kickin' It with Kidneys.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Kickin' It with Kidneys with your host, Cindy Barclay. See you next week. The views expressed on this podcast are educational and opinion-based. These are not medical doctors.
Be sure to catch us on social media on our website, kickinitwithkidneys.com, also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.